Paige.
Debbie?
First of all, I am thrilled that we're having this conversation because I think it's so important to shed light on. And I give all praise to you for championing this discussion. So, we're going to be discussing our experience navigating time off simultaneously over this past holiday season. We'll be talking about how we manage that, but more importantly and specifically, why we prioritize doing it and why we feel it's important to do so, right? It's possible. Let's jump in and start at the top of things. Let's talk about what led us to decide to take time off at the same time. I mean, that sounds like a wild idea, and why you were supportive of that.
Yeah. So often as the person being supported by an assistant, your schedule kind of takes priority, and then assistants feel like they have to fit in their time off around that. But when it's coming to something that is globally celebrated and people around the world are taking time off and they're recharging, it's not fair, or appropriate, or I think smart from a business perspective to not let the assistants partake in that the same way that anybody else would, and the employee in the as employees. Um, and yes, it makes things a little bit more complicated, but it felt so critical for us after a year where we hustled and we worked really hard for us both to be able to step away and trust that we don't work in a life or death industry. Everything's going to be okay. And we can actually just take a break and then come back in a new year recharged.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And like thank you, right? I've never been someone to fully unplug or like take time off for me. I've never actually unplugged from work. So when I first arrived at base, and I'm so glad you brought this up because someone shared sort of like that golden nugget with me, and it was we're not in the business of like life saving, so it's something I always remind myself of when I want to or when I feel like I need to take time off and think that I shouldn't. Um, so uh let's talk a bit about how we prepared to make this possible and sort of like what steps we took to prepare ourselves, the team, our clients, because you think I'm stepping away as an executive and my EA isn't going to be around to like catch all the things and download me when I get back. So I'd love for you to share your perspective on the prep before signing off.
Yeah, I mean, for me, how important it is to feel like things are buttoned up before I step away. And even then, I've got a bit of an issue with checking emails, even when I'm not supposed to. Don't love out of office uh, alerts or whatever they are. And so I think for you and me, what was so valuable was talking about what are all of the things that are open, what needs to happen for them to be closed. And you ask me this question every week of what would success look like in this scenario? And usually it's for the week coming, but what would success look like for you to be able to actually unplug? And that's phrased in such a smart way for me to think of like, okay, what needs to happen and then what is within my control, and anything that's in my control we can make a plan to work backwards and achieve it, and if it's not in our control it's probably a sign that we're just going to have to let it happen or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for like we've over time, I think built a system of trust and processes. And I thought if we've set things up right, this should be manageable, right? Um, and it's I think it's really important while we're both out. I know you don't love them, but right, like you said, setting those autoresponders so that people we took a significant amount of time this time off at the same time. So it was, for me really important that people who were going to get those knew that they still had a path to get what they needed. It
Yeah.
was a bit of a jolt to my system that your autoresponder couldn't point to me, but we included other team members for specific things, and that was great.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but I think sometimes we need to be given permission to unplug and check out. But sometimes it's even more than that. Sometimes it needs to be like, this is what's going to happen. And so
Mhm.
this year we just closed our doors to base and said, we're closed. And so then that gave us um, as a platform to reach out to the people who might be reaching out to us at that time of year to say, we're closed, you're not going to hear from us. But if something's urgent, here's how we can lean in and help you. And that almost made it easier for me too, and hopefully for you to feel like, okay, we're done. We've told everybody who needs to know, and this is a perfectly acceptable thing. And hopefully we're setting a good example also for people who don't feel like they have permission to do it.
Right. That's exactly right. That we proactively sent emails to all those key, people and letting them know our plans and giving them a chance to raise concerns before we went out. That was really helpful for me to be like, okay, if
Yeah,
anything happens, we have plans in place.
right. And it turns out no one had concerned.
Yeah,
They were all really excited.
that's right. And and our team, I mean, the team, right? They stepped up and were there because they were, the ones who were pointed to if need be. And so that was a really
Mhm.
a great, feeling to go away and it's going to be okay. Right. Okay, so we talked about how we prepped. I want to know how the experience was for you because we haven't talked about this yet.
Yeah.
What went well, right, while we were both away? What could have gone differently? And just overall,
Mhm.
had it taking time off together feel from your perspective?
Yeah. Felt like I was pretty able to untether my mind from work. Um, I was not in Slack at all. I didn't have any communication from clients or team members, I don't think. My challenge, as you know, is the inbox.
Mhm.
As a quick sidebar, I have a unified inbox. So all of my emails come to one place. So Debbie's in all of my emails and sees everything. And there's just stuff that happens, like Christmas gifts are being ordered. And so that was the hard part for me that I haven't figured out over how do I separate that. But then I also feel like it gives me a little bit of peace to see maybe someone needs something from me, but it's not urgent. And I'm okay letting it sit because I've got this autoresponder on or we've already communicated. So it went well. And I still didn't like fully unplug because I still feel like I need access to my personal email. So that's one bit maybe we haven't solved for yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that. I know the inbox is, that's a thing for you. And it is, I think, a continual process for us to continue to just like, adjust and, touch base on, especially considering that your inbox is integrated, both personal and professional. For me, the experience, right? It set me, like I said earlier, it really set me at ease just knowing that if anything came up, there was a plan in place and I had full trust in like my team members and my colleagues that if anything came up they would reach out to me. So that allowed me to just sort of like let go. And something that I wish went differently, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but we're all human. I did not pause our workflows, and I'm not sure if you noticed. And
Yeah.
so right before we came back, I realized, and I just knew you were going to come back to like a million Slack notifications that had no significance. And I was really disappointed about that. But the overall experience for me, I like when I knew we were initially going out at the same time, I was a bit nervous, right? As EAs, we are the catch-all, right? We're the net. And so but working at base, it's the first time I've worked for a company whose culture is about balance, right? And we work our best as EAs when we're at our best. And like I said earlier, we're not in the business of saving lives. I think what we do is life changing, but we're not performing surgeries. And so it's so important to know that you can and should take time off.
Hmm.
um you know
Yeah. I think setting up that bat phone protocol
Mhm.
of if this thing that we can imagine that would be really scary or bad to happen, what's the plan that we have in place? So you're not always wondering, like, is some fire burning somewhere that I didn't know about? That's the secret that seems so obvious, but I don't know if everybody puts that bat phone protocol in place. But that's what I feel like, okay, cool. And if like you're not out of office at the same time, I always just know you'll text me. But it's the same thing across our team or anybody else because of
Yeah.
that phone protocol, which I'm now calling it.
I love that phone. We have adopted it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, it's true, and it's easy to fall into the mindset that the EA role is 24/7. But this experience reminded me that taking time out for myself just makes me a better support system in the long run for you. The risk of burnout in this role, it's incredibly high. In order
Mhm.
for me to support you in the best way, you need to be supported. It's important for me to be my best, right? Which means recharging sometimes. And having that support from you just makes it so much easier for me. I've adopted it as part of my role, right? Otherwise, I don't think I would be able to do it. Um, as someone who's a self-proclaimed workaholic, it's just that mindset helps me lean into like self-care and
Yeah.
prioritize well-being. Yeah.
Yeah. We've done this in the past, and you've not necessarily needed it, but I've written in self-care, and things like that into job descriptions for folks who really feel like they need more than permission, because I do expect that of you. It is part of the job description for everybody on our team. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to bring your best self to work. And I think that's critical. I think the way that we have structured things as a society, like, I think we're doing it wrong. So yes, I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that you've been okay with that and you take it seriously.
I mean, like, you're such I'm your support, but you're such a support system, and you're leading by that example, and it's just so appreciated, in especially in this role, right? Having that time to step away, coming back, it made me feel energized and like motivated to hit the ground running. We're in this Q1 sprint, and so it's if I'd gone into this coming out of the year, the end of the year, I don't think I'd have quite as much energy or like mental capacity to tackle it successfully. So it made me really excited to jump back in. Yeah. Okay. Lastly, what advice would you give to other leaders and EAs considering a similar setup?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to justify not taking time off and not stepping away because there's always something urgent. There's always something that someone needs you for yesterday. Um, So, I guess, appreciating and acknowledging the criticality of taking care of yourself and of setting that example for your team, because you, as the founder, the CEO, the leader, in whatever capacity, if you are not taking care of yourself, that sets a silent intention across the rest of the team. So, first, like, do it, take it seriously, like we've been talking about, and then look ahead. Think about, where could everything go wrong? What do we do if that happens? And then figure out your bat phone protocol. It's the most important thing. Um, and then you'll be surprised at how much support you already have out there for you. Maybe you and your assistant are taking time off, but you're not the only two involved in your sphere of influence. And there are a lot of people that you can lean on, and people who would probably be pretty happy to support you, or even just wait a couple days till you got back so you could respond to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. Agreed on all the fronts. I think the only thing I would add is like communication. And as you were saying, planning
Yes.
is critical,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Over communicate. And then, like you said, just trust your systems and your people, right?
Hmm.
And it instills, taking time off doesn't just benefit you, it shows your team that you trust them and you value their growth and their expertise. And it just trickles down and creates this incredible, you know, uh, this incredible bubble of trust, that I can step away.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
said. I appreciate, or I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Um, no, I think just encouragement to do it. And if you feel like you're under-resourced across your team, we have a lot of resources available to us just in today's world. You can, for instance, lean on a base EA. We have seasonal coverage or temporary coverage, which we do a ton for vacation coverage or parental leave. Um, but like beside all of that, just it's okay to just not get back to people for a little bit and put a pause on things. No one's gonna die. If you're a surgeon, don't take my advice. That's not okay. But for most of the rest of us, it'll be okay.
exactly right. I mean, I've had this sticky note up, and it's like not everything that's emergent is urgent, and it just like helps remind me, So great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having this conversation with me and opening up this dialogue and really shining a light on this. Right, I can't express it enough, but I appreciate your constant support and championing. I mean, it makes my job really easy. You really set the standard for what this should look like. So I thank you.
Thank you. And like I could say each of those words right back at you. So ditto.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks.
Thank you.